Here, I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Chris Grimes. And Chris and I are going to talk about the art of spontaneity in the universe of yes and, whatever that means. Chris, where can people find you? And the answer to that isn't Bristol.
Thank you for teeing me up to not say that. Yes, it's thegoodlisteningtoshow.com, which is my podcast and radio show channel. But also, very excitingly, there are two others, legacylifereflections.com, which is a very special new series strand that actually has been there all along within the mountainscape of thegoodlisteningtoshow.com. But Legacy Life Reflections is to help you record either your story or the story of somebody near, dear, or close to you for posterity, without any morbid intention, but lest we forget before it's too late. And as I say, no morbid intention, but let's be honest, we ain't getting out of here alive. So the time has come. The time is now. So those are my two podcast and radio show URLs. And then I do my communication skills training, coaching, and facilitation through a website called secondcurve.uk. And of course, you can link to me on LinkedIn, where I say I am Spartacus, your go-to partner for more impactful leadership, communication skills training, and storytelling. Boom.
And I've been on your podcast, Chris, and it is a fantastic podcast. As I've said to you before, it's very Radio 4.
And thank you for that compliment.
And I mean that as a compliment.
No, I took it absolutely. Thegoodlisteningtoshow.com is a reinvigoration without competing against, but in similar waters, in fishing from the same well of storytelling as Desert Island Discs. But yes, mine is energetically, rather than being on a desert island, as you experienced yourself, it's within a clearing or serious happy place of my guests' choosing. And indeed, that may help us to segue into what we're here to talk about, because my clearing is also a yes and comedy improvisation space where the best, well, comedy happens, but in the podcast scape, it's where all the best questions come to get asked and all the best stories come to get told.
So tell me about this. Tell me about the yes and improv thing, because I think we need to kind of start from the bottom and work upwards. Because I think that quite often when people talk about improv, they immediately. So I interviewed somebody about improv on the podcast I run on Friday, where we get the team together, and most of the team didn't turn up because they thought they were going to have to be funny.
Now that's interesting of itself. In its most wonderful, purest form, it is absolutely categorically not competing to be funny. It's actually about the beauty of the nature of ensemble, using the mindset and methodology of what I perceive or what I believe to be the very building blocks of creativity, which is the mindset of yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and. There's something in comedy improvisation called reincorporation. I'm deliberately reincorporating there by getting the audience listening to think about the refrain. Just say in your own head, yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and. And do you mind playing the game, Tim? Do you mind just saying yes?
No, not at all. Yeah, yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and.
And now can you say no but, no but, no but, no but?
No but, no but, no but, no but.
Now, my punchline is, guess which one you're more hardwired to as a grown-up adult, and it is no but, no but, no but, no but, which is why the liberation happens with yes and, yes and. Obviously, there's yes but, yes but, yes but as well. That's the third thing to get you to say. The best communication skills happens in threes. So can you say yes but, yes but, yes but, yes but?
Yes but, yes but, yes but.
So in the universe of yes and, just many more doors on lubricated hinges open if you say yes more in life. And even in participating and getting meetings to move forward, saying yes and rather than yes but or yes, or no but, more of a sort of block. In the world of comedy improvisation, there's something called blocking. And if I say to you, look at my glorious new blue coat, and if they go, who are you? And you're not wearing a blue coat, then that's a block. That's a no but. So yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and are, they're the building blocks of creativity. It informs so much of what I do as a comedy improvisation performer by training and background. But it goes way back because I'm a drama teacher, actor, and comedy improvisation performer. Those are my sort of silky skills of the different skills I bring to bear.
Because I've been in many a meeting where someone says, I've got this great idea. And then immediately people say, yeah, but. Yeah,
And
but
no, that drops the ball. It completely blocks the idea subtly, but profoundly. It is a bit like getting a sort of cricket bat. We talked about the Chuckle Brothers just before we got on. It's a bit like having a
we often
cricket
talk
bat.
about the Chuckle Brothers, Chris.
Pardon me?
We often talk about the Chuckle. You ring me up and say, I want to talk to you about the Chuckle Brothers.
It's a bit like to me, to you, to me, to you. Even that's comedy improvisation because it's passing the ball of conversation to and forth. So the art of conversation is very ingrained with yes and as well.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, what so often happens in business is that because you know, we're kind of hardwired to say no.
Yes.
So we say yes, but because it's actually what we don't want to do is say no. And immediately what we do is you know, was it someone, I remember Brian Solis basically put up a slide where it said, you know, I tried to do transformation but ended up spending all my time in meetings. And then it was one of those things where, you know, you go into a meeting with a good idea and immediately everybody slaps it down.
Yes.
Rather
saying
than
yes. No, if you're noticing, I'm deliberately saying yes, although I'm
yes,
hardwired to say yes rather than
yes, and rather than actually saying yes and, which is immediately, you know, something that as leaders that we should be saying, and making sure
yes.
that we're creating a culture in our teams of saying, because that's where we can say, okay, we may not agree. Okay, so we may not agree with that idea, but let's improvise on it.
Let's go feral from the point of view. There's no script in life. So yes, and we're actually far better at it than we think. And in fact, there's a drama game which is called Yes, Let's, whereas I have an idea, you just keep saying yes, let's, yes, let's, yes, let's. It's just a way of, in a non-cheesy way, it just opens up the synapses. And we call it, when I'm coaching and training about comedy improvisation, it's getting the wedge out of your head and getting your right brain to animate more. So yes, and is a more creative universe. We know it's where blue sky thinking exists, even though that's put people off with a bit of cheese, not what I just said, but you know, there are ways that we sort of grown with whatever's funky or sexy in the world of creativity. But I would, you know, I put it to you that yes and is really beautiful and can help in so many ways.
So how can leaders use this improvisation technique to help increase the creativity of their teams?
Well, if it can be ingrained within the culture of an organization, then everybody is going to be in a much more optimistic, exuberant space. It isn't just about just saying yes to everything, but I'll give you my favorite use of it. We can all feel overwhelmed. You know, leaders can feel overwhelmed. I can feel overwhelmed. You can feel overwhelmed because the world is hectic and it's also scary, and it's also it's no butting you the whole time or yes butting you. But in the universe of overwhelm, you know how we can think, oh gosh, today I've got to, then I've got to, and after that, oh, I'm so flipping responsible. After that, I've got to. So I'm giving you the universe which is familiar to us all, which is got to. All you need to do in the comedy improvisational yes and methodology is replace the O vowel in got with an E vowel. You've got the same workload on your plate of accountability and responsibility, but today, instead of got to, here it comes. Today I get to, and then I get to, hey, and then guess what? After that I get to, and then I get to, and just using that reframing, which is so important to coaching and the art of thinking more with greater agility. It just gives you a yes and lens to reframe your experience. So I promise you and everyone listening, every week I know that get to gets me through the got to pain that I may as a human being be experiencing. Because
So
how
that's
lucky am I that I get to do all this stuff?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I just wanted to go back through that again, in terms of changing your I've got to do this, which is, I've got to go to the shops. Actually, I get to go to the shops because actually there's some, you know, I get to look at I can go and get some Stilton cheese because I quite fancy some, or something like that.
Nom 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 nom.
Yeah. I actually had some at lunch. It's lovely, isn't it? And it, you know, it's about trying to move your life on positively, isn't it? Rather than
yes,
than to say I'm alive at this amazing time, and life is such a.
And the other reality test for all of us, you know, in emotional intelligence, there's something called reality testing, what we think's going on. versus what's actually going on. Most of our problems, and I know I'm not diminishing anyone's life plate of problems, but most of our problems on the daily, by comparison and by perspective, are first world problems. You know, even the geography of, I'm sitting here in Bristol, which is, you asked me where I was from and where we can find me. There are my URLs, but there's also Bristol. But, you know, I'm in a, you know, we are, I know, in a very privileged position, because here we are riffing about something that's genuinely helpful. But, you know, this is a pleasure and a privilege to be on this platform talking about this. And as I say, I'm not diminishing anyone's struggles in life, because, you know, my life's not perfect either. But I definitely use the methodology and the mind map of Yes And in a way that helps me significantly on the daily, and if not on the daily, on the weekly.
So most people, I think, that I come across, when you talk about improvisation, they do think it's about being funny, because we've seen
Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Whose Line Is It Anyway on the TV, and we think it's about, you know, stepping off the step and suddenly coming up with some witty comment, where actually it's a leadership skill, isn't it?
It is. It is so profoundly based on the idea of really good, positive teamwork, because it's the nature of ensemble. With an attitude of yes and, the technique is you step off the, you know, cross the line, you step off the cliff, you make a strong, bold assumption. With an attitude of yes and, all you need is the first idea, and then someone joins you in the same energetic space with an attitude of yes and builds on your ideas. So it's a bit like when you swim away from the reef, when you're swimming in the sea and it gets a bit colder and you think, oh, but actually we're much better off if we're risking a bit in life. You know, those three lovely concentric circles of comfort, risk, panic. You know, nobody wants anyone to panic, because people can panic when they think about performing. But, you know, the really wonderful thing to do is to pull people, draw people away from the reef, and just experience that actually you don't drown because you can float anyway. You know, most people drown because they're flailing about and struggling against the fact that actually you're quite designed to float, which is why it's not a practice I did, but I know some parents actually just teach their kids to swim by literally throwing the baby into the pool and waiting for it to bob back up again. I didn't do that myself. I was more into the inflatable armbands, but you know, yes, and you can try that, but please don't try that at home necessarily.
I think my parents were in that mode about alcohol, where they just kind of let me throw myself into it, on the basis that I would find
that you'd self-regulate,
you know.
Yes, and you'd self-regulate.
Yeah.
Yes, which most of us can do. I mean, I know there are exceptions to that.
So one of the things that I'm currently reading a book about burnout. It's one of the books that I've been asked to read to interview the person, and they talk about, I can't remember who said it, is that you are the 5 people that you know best. You're kind of like that, and what you need to do to avoid burnout is to avoid negative people.
So surround yourself with people that energize you and contribute.
Yes. So what you need to be doing is surrounding yourself with people who offer this a positive energy rather than negative energy. And I'm guessing this is really the got to get to, and the yes and attitude is kind of that positivity that we're trying to
and congratulations for the use of the word energy as well, because as we all know, in life there are people who are like radiators. Have you heard of humans analogized to radiators or drains? We all know people who just, hopefully listening to us, is just warming for you, like stepping into the sunlight of energy and a bit of vivacity. And then we all know also people who are drains, people who can, you know, suck the very life force out of you just by being in the same room as them. So energy is the currency and the elixir of all connection. And that's linked very closely to the building blocks of creativity. As I said, you know, most people just don't turn up using enough energy in life, and particularly in communication skills. When I talk about personal impact, you know, personal impact is the afterburn of you, me, everybody. When you've left the building, the room, the interaction, the Zoom room, you know, what do you leave behind? And people energetically, using that word again deliberately to reincorporate it, they're either thinking good things about you, hurrah, that's obviously good. They could be thinking bad things about you, boo, that's obviously bad. But the most dangerous thing of all, I use the rule of 3 there, is that they think nothing at all about you. You know, people who can blend into the very fabric of the building in which they work. or how they operate in their world, just not turning up.
And what did you call it? Sorry, because I wanted to make a note of this.
What personal impact?
Yes.
It's the afterburn of you. It's the ripple effect that we have on our fellow human beings using the currency of energy and how we connect or actually disconnect with our fellow human beings. And I do an exercise when I'm coaching people about energy, which is borrowed from Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You know how the porridge is too hot, too cold, just right. An energetic disposition, you've got to make sure that you calibrate to just right, or if not, a heightened version of just right. But most people, if you have I could use an energetic disposition of 5 different ways to show up with energy. 1 and 2, not enough. 3, just right. 4, slightly heightened, but still okay. 5 would be too much. But most people, the punchline of that exercise is, guess what? Most people, even though we all agree 3 is just right, most people lock off and default to about 2.25 by accidentally being a little bit underwhelming. So I work hard to get people to use the right amount of energy to get them to be better communicators.
And I was given some advice about when I first started this podcast, which was to amp it up, because actually on video, for some reason or other, you need to be more energetic.
You do.
To come across. a normal 3 isn't quite enough. You've got to kind of turn it up to 4.
Yeah, so you need to try and default to a 4. Although people don't have the currency of a 4. They think, well, I'm doing a 4. And actually they're doing a 2.5.
Yeah.
And as you know from podcasting, the world of, you need to operate as if you're running your own YouTube channel. And I'm doing that now and using body language choices. I know I'm waving my arms around, but that's deliberate because my hands are available for gesture. Now, you just trust me more if you can see my hands. And if I reduce my energy now, you can just trust me more if I use enough energy, and you can trust me more if I use my hands. So I get people to do an exercise, which is my hands are available for gesture, to get people to show up better and in a more energized yes and way online.
And that's interesting, because I think that when I was taught how to give presentations, everybody basically said, put your hands by your side. Don't do this. And actually, you talk with your hands.
You do.
And the gestures. And it's really interesting for me seeing people using their hands like this on the podcast.
Yes.
And how YouTube actually picks that up. Because it automatically nowadays, using AI, takes a photo. Okay. Always the photo that it takes will be somebody, the guest, smiling and using their hands, which is lovely.
Yes, and that's a good use of AI, I would say, because it's about capturing people at their most animated. So AI, animated intelligence, is what this is about. We've created a new brand, animated intelligence.
Animated intelligence. I better go and quickly register that. So how, if we're going to do this, if as we in the last two minutes, what can we do now to make ourselves better? Because we want to turn up and be the best person we can be. So how can we use get to and yes and more in our lives?
If you remember to apply it, it will make your life better. You just have a more optimistic lens on the world if you use yes and methodology and mindset mapping. You can also, I'm extremely available to come and actually take you through some teamwork to make the dream work, the cogs of rapport, how to get the sand out of your gears. One of my favorite quotes when doing team building is, the bicycle chain is a great teacher. No one link is any more important than the other. So this is how to get the sand out of your gears to be able to get you to be much more in rapport with your own communication skills, but also the reciprocity involved in igniting other people's energy as well, because we like to match each other as human beings.
Because that's really key, isn't it? From a human perspective, is to make sure that everybody's doing it, and we're being, as you say, each chain in a cycle chain.
Yes.
We're no better than everybody else, but what we're doing is that we all have a part to play, don't we?
We do. And my job is almost one interaction at a time, trying to improve the world with better communication skills. And that's one of my factory default settings. But the other one, of course, which, you haven't necessarily said, tell me about this too, but I'm so passionate about helping people to get their story out there through my storytelling construct, the Good Listening To show, Stories of Distinction and Genius. Why I'm calling it that deliberately is because everybody has a really good story to tell, provided you give them the courtesy of a damn good listening to. And this is to encourage people to tell their story out loud, to live it out loud. And that's what I'm excited about.
Chris, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and talking about this. I think it's for somebody that is always trying to do their best in life. It's something it's a lens, to use the term, that I need to start using. And I love this moving from I've got to get to. I've been trying to use the yes and for probably a couple of years now. Because I think as a leader, I've got to do that. But thank you so much for coming on and talking about it.
You're welcome. And we're both about reciprocity. You've actually informed my life and moved it on through your own ability to yes and, because you yes and passed the golden baton by being in my show. There's a construct called Pass the Golden Baton, where you pass the golden thread of storytelling along. That of itself was yes and, because that was when you pointed me to Antonia Wade from PwC, and she's been a fantastic guest. That in her reincorporation of something I now know as well is the punchline of one of the many sort of alchemy of leadership things she said was, we are where we are today, all of us, because of choices and decisions we made 5 years ago. As I sit in front of you now, Tim Chiru, to borrow from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, it's almost 5 years to the day that I started on the path and the trail of the Good Listening To Show, Stories of Distinction and Genius. And I'm incredibly grateful for the path and the journey that that's taking me on in a yes and way.
Excellent. So Chris, where can people find you?
So check out LinkedIn for definite, Chris Grimes. You'll see me because I am Spartacus. Why I say that is so many people say to the world, am I Spartacus? Do you mind if I'm Spartacus? Would it be okay if you're more senior, if I was kind of like Spartacus? So this is the energetic difference between I am, everybody say that, I am, as opposed to am I? Just the reversal of two words, but two profoundly different impacts. So yes, my training, coaching and facilitation is secondcurve.uk. That's a bit like where I started, but comedy improvisation is instantwit.co.uk. That's my comedy improvisation company, where even this very Saturday, I'm going to be on stage round about once or twice a month. I get to stand up and have the privilege of being in an empty space, brimming and charged with potential, where anything is possible. Instant Wit are performing in Bristol this very Saturday at the Alma Tavern Pub Theatre. That's instantwit.co.uk. We can come into your company and do a workshop about it and also perform it for you as well. So there's instantwit.co.uk, thegoodlisteningtoshow.com, which again is suffused with energy pertaining to yes andness because of the clearing where it's energetically set. And then very excitingly, my newest, it's been there all along, series strand, which is called legacylifereflections.com.
Excellent. Chris, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight